So let me start with Kumayl. Kumayl is CEO of Zypher and involved in renewable energies. Where do you see the energy mix going in near future? And we also heard about this presentation. So where do you see energy mix going in near and distant future in Pakistan?
So thank you for the question. I think Phil's points on a global basis were to the point with regards to green hydrogen and battery storage, but those are long-term objectives in markets where there's significant amount of liquidity and there's financing capital to build out that infrastructure. In terms of Pakistan, the challenges that we're having today with regards to grid stability, evacuation of power, and other challenges, I don't believe we'll see significant amounts of renewable energy coming through. And even though we have coal in the pipeline available from Thar, it will be very difficult for financing to be achieved. So as of right now, I don't see significant expansion of power generation in the sector today.
So you think that by 2030, we are not going to have 60% of renewables in Pakistan?
I think it'll be very challenging. If you're bringing hydro into the mix and you're doing significantly large-scale hydro into the analysis, then potentially. But as of right now, the transmission infrastructure and distribution infrastructure is significantly lacking. So I don't think we'll be there. I don't think we've, and I'll ask my peers over here, we've ever been able to achieve any of the milestones we've been set. We should not have been at 1.8 gigawatts of wind today, as is given the available resources and the objectives we have as a nation to be doing renewable energy infrastructure. So no, I don't think we'll get there in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you. Saqib, you represent HAPCO, which is the very first IPP in Pakistan. So how do you see the issue of circular debt affecting the risk profile of power sector in Pakistan?
Thank you, Zaid Saab. I think if you look at circular debt, first of all, there should be realization at the government level that this is not the fault of IPPs. Because what it does is that it diverts the attention from the core issues and you start blaming somebody who did not actually originate it. So circular debt has two parts. One is related to the fact that unfortunately in the last 8 years, we have built capacity of more than 40,000 megawatts. And if you look at Pakistan, overall demand for 8 months of the year is just maximum 13 to 14,000 megawatts. And even when you are talking about 4 months of summer, the peak is around 23, 24,000 megawatts. So the root cause of the problem is that we have unfortunately generated more capacity than we need, even for the peak months. So where do we go from here? On the supply side, we have always talked about it, but the key issues are that our discos are inefficient. We have not been able to find out any avenue where we can reduce theft. And this is something which can improve somewhat the overall collection of CPPA. Then the other issues are related to on the demand side. Now what is happening is because the entire focus is on blaming IPPs and other things, so there are many inefficiencies on the demand side also. For example, this winter, in December and January, furnace oil plants based in upcountry were dispatched, but at the same time, half the imported coal plants, which were half of, whose variable cost is half of furnace oil plants, they were off. So it further creates pressure in the system for government that their total revenues or their total cost is very high. So there should be investment in the transmission side, on the distribution side. There has been a lot of discussion, but so far, unfortunately, what we have seen is that there is no concrete progress on how to reduce the transmission, because most of the generation or excess generation is on the south side, and your demand is on the north side. But unfortunately, you are not able to take advantage of even low-cost power generation available. I will give you an example of wind. We all know that there was a presentation earlier also that wind curtailment happens everywhere, but in Pakistan, unfortunately, wind curtailment is more prevalent, and this is also resulting in the fact that you are losing precious foreign exchange, and at the same time, you are actually increasing the overall cost of electricity. The last thing which I would like to say is on the demand side, maybe what we need to do is there are some small steps, some easy wins, I would say. First of all, there is a strong lobby and they are supplied captive gas for the captive power plants. We know they are inefficient. And we know we have 4 LNG-based power plants who can run at 60% efficiency. So that whatever local gas is available, that should be diverted to those LNG-based power plants, and some kind of tariff mechanism can be actually sorted out to ease the pressure on those who are relying on cheaper gas, but they are inefficient. Then I think there is a need on a long-term basis to look at how to increase the demand. Maybe we look at EVs. I went to China, I think 2 months back, in city called Chengdu, and I did not see a single motorbike which was on combustion engine. There is a 100% conversion to EV bikes. Similarly, if you look at EV automobiles, there is a potential that if you can actually have a right incentive, you can improve the demand on that front. So this is one area, and they maybe explore other areas. For example, rather than actually doing extension of railway through ML1 through improving tracks, you can look at converting railway to electricity. This can result in foreign exchange savings. So a lot of long-term impacts steps are needed. On a short-term basis, which I mentioned, that there is a need to invest in grid rather than, I agree with Kumayl Saab, there is a need to invest in transmission and distribution rather than generation at this point of time.
Thank you. Ubaid, the government wants to increase the share of renewables, and they have been trying for it. Recently, there was a tender for, international tender for 600 megawatt solar in Muzaffargarh. There were multiple extensions, but not a single bid was received. What were the reasons for this failure to attract any investor for this?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I think it was an ill-thought-out plan by the government, where we have been politically for the last couple of years. So political uncertainty was definitely one of the bigger challenges that Pakistan was facing. Coupled with, as Kumayl also mentioned, we don't have the infrastructure to evacuate the existing renewable energy projects that we have been developing and have brought online in the last 10 years, including most of the wind corridor is being curtailed even today tremendously. We don't have demand. In the winter, our demand goes down to 7,000 megawatts. In the summer, we are only able to evacuate up to 28 to 30,000 megawatts. We have, as they say, 40+ thousand megawatts installed capacity. So when we went to our lenders and we looked at the project, most of the foreign lenders, and without foreign lending, we can't put projects because we don't have dollars in the state bank to be able to buy imported goods. So all the lenders were of the view that any new generation they're not going to be financing any of that. And without that, it's not going to come. So I think the focus needs to go back to infrastructure development first. Without transmission distribution, none of these plans are going to work. Yes, we do want to bring in solar and bring the cost of energy down for everybody, but that's one side of the focus. You can do all that and put 10,000 megawatts if you find some crazy guys to come and do it, but what are you going to do with it? Because if you can't evacuate it, you come up back to what Saqib was talking about, a circular debt. Because you have production, or you have to pay these guys curtailment and non-project missed volume, what we call NPMV, whereas you're getting zero revenue against that because you weren't able to sell all that. So that entire misnomer has to be resolved. It cannot continue like this. Without that, I don't think any new renewable energy investments are going to come into Pakistan, be it the 600 megawatts or anything else for that matter, or the dream that we have of by 2030 having 10,000 megawatts of wind and solar, as was displayed on the panel earlier. I don't see that happening at all because we are just not ready for it as far as infrastructure is concerned. Everything is coming in the south. South is gluttoned with nuclear, coal and renewable energy, and there is no highway which was supposed to be built to take all of this to the load centers in Punjab, Lahore, Faisalabad, Gujranwala, Sialkot. There is no plan, there is nothing there for all of this power to flow in that direction. HESCO itself only has 1,200 megawatts of demand. With HESCO's dismal network, they only take 800 because the more they buy, the more they lose. They can't seem to get their act together. They can't seem to get their transmissions together. They can't seem to get collections in place. So with that, how do you evacuate? How are you going to do all this? So I don't see the 600 megawatt failure was primarily because of your networks not being able to handle any additional renewable power.
So you mentioned about curtailment of wind power. As far as I know, that now there are no transmission constraints in the wind corridor. Even then, the wind power is being curtailed.
There is tremendous transmission constraint because when they did build something, but then they did not build anything for thermal and nuclear. So when those came on, those aren't plants that you can shut down and start up whenever you want. They're not peaking plants. They're base load plants. You can't go beyond 50 or 40% load factors on them. So they keep running, and they go on the same lines that were built for renewable energy. So renewable energy is shut down. Even 2 days ago, when we had such high winds where we should be producing 50 megawatts from each plant, we were curtailed to 2 megawatts. And I'm talking about the new ones which just came in, 610 megawatts. Those are 5-cent projects, 14 cents delivered in electricity. They're being curtailed continuously. For the last 2 years that we've come online, we have 2 of them running to 110 megawatts. We are being curtailed continuously.
So all of us from being power sector, so unless you are the one from oil and gas.
I am the odd one out, yeah.
Yeah. So
I've done oil and gas too, so I run a power plant with oil.
So we would like to have a different view from you on circular debt in your sector, because previously we used to hear every time that there's so much circular debt in power sector, but now we see that yours is also nearly equal to ours. So what is the reason behind it?
Before I go into that debate, I think the discussions, just my view on what the other participants said about a few things. Obviously, we look at the energy sector from various perspectives. Currently, the fossil fuels account for approximately 64% of Pakistan's energy mix, with approximately 27% coming from hydro, which is besides the fuel, and then you have the others, which are all the nuclears and all that. The world is moving towards just getting the fossil fuels off the table. We're talking about 2030. We have got all these aspirations of making sure that 2030 we move towards cleaner energy. You would be surprised to know that from the latest projections, you will hit peak oil in 2030 as far as global oil forecasts are concerned. And we should hit peak oil in Pakistan in approximately 2041. So there is no chance of, as the panelists rightly said, of oil and gas going away in Pakistan as quickly as we are expected to have. Obviously, that leaves us with a few options, and the options being more gas, because you have had a steady decline rate of approximately 5 to 7% in all the mature brownfields which we have. And then you're looking at building more dams, etc., which you're working on, again, long-term projects which will take time to come online. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I see we shifting slightly towards a little bit more gas because of the RLNG which we're supplying. So we see a little bit of more RLNG coming in the system, maybe a couple of new terminals, etc. And that's where we will be by that time. Another interesting fact which is there is that less than 1%, if you if you install solar panels in Pakistan, because of the vast potential it possesses, you would be able to light up every home in Pakistan. And that is the potential which we're looking at. But again, there are so many factors. I mean, external financing is one of the factors, prohibitive costs, etc., etc. So these are the long-term solutions which we're looking at. From our perspective, or my perspective, I see that as a 10-plus year solution to what we have. You questioned about circular debt. Yes, circular debt is obnoxious as far as OGDC is concerned, even though we are an oil and gas government-owned company. But our circular debt is in excess of 850 billion rupees, only OGDCL. And that moves approximately, we add approximately 20 billion rupees per month on our circular debt balance sheet. And that is, I'm not talking about any of the penalties, etc., which we have. I mean, if I talk about that, that is a different story altogether. Circular debt, until and unless we have some sincere efforts to basically make sure that our policies are brought in line with what we have in the system. We have to acknowledge that there are distribution losses. We have to acknowledge that we have customers, especially in far-flung areas like Balochistan, KPK, etc., which we will not pay, and we'll have to account for those losses, and people like us will have to bear those losses. That is something which we'll need to acknowledge and accept, and maybe have the will to basically address that. Until unless that is addressed, circular debt will not go away. And I see this situation aggravating. We've already had 2 increases in the gas prices. I see more increases in the gas prices because the local gas is depleting. You can see an average of gas price of $2.6 is what the local companies sell, as compared to LNG, which is like $11 to $12, depending on the type of contract. So, and you're diverting all those to households. So that particular thing, until unless you have government subsidy, which we cannot afford, or you increase the prices and which the consumers are going to. So circular debt is a growing problem, and I think it's growing much faster in the oil and gas or E&P industry sector as compared to the power sector in the past 3-4 years.
Thank you. Saqib, your group has been investing in further projects. You guys started from HUBCO, the initial one, and then you have been investing. So what are the challenges and opportunities for new investors who want to invest in power sector in Pakistan? Because when you invest, it means you have confidence in Pakistan's power sector. So what are the challenges and opportunities for new investors?
Yeah, so first of all, I will talk about challenges. Unfortunately, whatever investment we made, that was made prior to the crisis which we are seeing in the last 2 years, right? So before that, despite the challenges, there were investors who were willing to invest. I will give you one example why there are issues, and these are the issues which we need to address before we can actually invite foreign investors. The first of all is related to dividend repatriation. If I will give you example of our partners who have invested in China Power, which is the imported coal power plant. The project was started in 2016. The COD was achieved in 2019, and in the fourth quarter of last year, we were able to declare first dividend, which was a nominal dividend, and still the dividend repatriation has not happened. Only partial dividend repatriation has happened. So even if you offer 20% or even 25% dollar returns, but if foreign investor has no idea that when will they be able to take their money out, how can you expect anybody to look at Pakistan as an investment climate, unfortunately. The second thing is, if you talk about local investors, again, I will talk about IPPs, that IPPs are generally exempt from income tax, right? Now, what has happened is that you are exempt for income tax, and yes, there was in 2015 policy, there was the dividend, there was some tax on dividend, which was not a pass-through, and it was a conscious call by all the investors that there is a tax on dividend, right? But then what you come up with later on, that you increase that tax from 7.5% to 15%, and in some cases 25%. And then on top of it, you also have the provision of super tax now, 10%. So, and when you go to the regulator, you get an answer that this is as per IA. Because in IA, there was no such thing, there was no such commitment. The commitment was only to the project company. So you are violating the substance of agreement, and at the same time, you expect local investors to actually continue investment in the power generation. So unfortunately, until and unless we resolve these long-term issues and investors have the confidence that probably they will be able to get some return, or at least not the 100% return which has been guaranteed, but at least a significant portion of it. This is one of the challenge. Now, coming to the opportunities, I think if we are able to resolve these issues, we know that we have a high population. We are a high population growth country, so the demand of power will continue. Maybe there is a period in which we don't need to invest in power generation at least for the 5-6 years because we have excess capacity. But we are fairly confident that that after that there will be a demand. So this is one of the opportunity for a country like Pakistan because it's a growing population country. And then despite and one area which we feel is an opportunity is that despite these recent setbacks, I still feel that China is a country which can look at investing in Pakistan again if we are able to actually have a discussion on whatever investment they have undertaken. If we can give them a comfort, then this is one area because we can actually tap that resource for future investment.
Thank you. Kumayl, same question to you, but with a different angle. Will you invest again in Pakistan, in the power sector?
Yes.
It means there's no risk?
No, you see, the conversation we're all having up here and what everyone's, and since this is predominantly insurance driven, this event, our documents are good documents. They're structured properly.
The security package, you mean?
The security packages, the assignment of risk is correct, and it's enticing for stakeholders to invest in strong documentation. Now, whether the documentation is actually implemented, enforced, followed, respected by the counterpart is a different issue. And all of us sitting up here have gripes that we deal with on a daily basis. We spend more time dealing with violations of the finance documents that we have than operating or generating assets. So if the risk is assigned appropriately and significant work is done to increase consumer demand, not consumer demand, industry demand and GDP growth, because really the issue on the fossil fuel side is you're having capacity payments. You don't need to build more capacity. You need to actually have economic growth to drive the spread between summers and winters. So if you have the right indicators, I'm sure everyone who's sitting up here would be pro. But ultimately, how do we get there, and do we feel comfortable with the current situation of it being resolved? And today, my answer is no, but long-term, my answer would be yes.
I'm trying to save a bit time so that we can have comments or questions from the participants. Just a couple of questions more, and then maybe we will try to come to you. Ubaid, are you satisfied with the role of regulator in the power sector?
Tricky question.
I don't want to answer that question.
I don't think anyone wants to answer that question. No.
I'm going to ask the same question.
We don't have a regulator.
What about Ogra?
He's taken the cop out. You don't have a regulator. No, so the regulator, like Kumayl mentioned, the documentation that has gone through the regulators and all that is in place. Unfortunately, it is not followed in letter and spirit. Our EPAs, our IAs, the way things are treated, they are short-handed because they cannot evacuate power, so they end up with all these circular debt issues, which are not obviously envisaged in the whole grand scheme of things, that this is how IPP business or IPPs, once they come in, this is going to end up. Like I've been told, I've been doing IPPs since '94. So I've been told once by one gentleman from the old WAPDA days, we didn't have a circular debt till you guys came in, and since you came in, therefore the circular debt happened. So, so they came up with all these issues cropped up which weren't envisaged. So they are kind of short-handed to that. The regulator has tried definitely to ease the pain, but no matter what you say, the regulator is kind of on the government side. So when it comes to reprimanding WAPDA, CPPA, NTDC type of people, they say, look, what can we do? They don't have the money to pay you, or they don't have the resources to build lines. They don't have that. So yes, it is. They've tried, but I don't think very effectively or very arbitrarily for both sides. So the regulators do need to improve on that side and be more partial in terms of giving their rulings. I think, having said that, NEPRA has tried a lot, but they still need a lot of capacity building. Like when we go for tariff true-ups, it takes almost a year and a half to get tariff true-ups, which just changes everything, especially if you look at the last 2 years of Pakistan, where inflation has been highest ever, devaluation has been crazy, and these projects which are funded by foreign debt and some of them with foreign equity, you are losing confidence in the world market when you take a year and a half to just give tariff true-ups because you don't have the capacities within to be able to process those. And that suffering really needs to be taken care of. And if we are going to be looking at whatever amount of renewable energy that comes in, we obviously will need dollars to be brought in and foreign investment hopefully to come in. And so these sort of issues really need to be looked at by the regulator and speed things up in terms of getting things done. And I think the regulator also needs to jump in and somehow figure out how all of this process of approvals from LOI all the way to construction start or financial close. Now we have to, in the 90s, it was much easier. When the regulator wasn't there, you had PPIB, you went there, everything got sorted, I did that, and I know how much faster it was. Now you go from pillar to post, door to door, Lahore to Islamabad, many times over before some things actually get done. So those are the things that I think the regulator needs to look at and try and ease those, processes and doing business easement and getting these true-ups sorted out as quickly as possible rather than taking a year and a half, 2 years on a 50 megawatt project. So I think they've done a lot, but there's a lot more improvement required.
So in short, what I understand is you mean there has to be a regulator for the regulator also.
So no, I think the regulator needs to kind of understand where the shortcomings are, and a stakeholder maybe conference can take place on it, not on a larger scale, but then they need to be receptive of the criticism that is coming their way. Because obviously we can't work without them, they can't work without us, so it has to be constructive criticism, and we need to work together to get out of this hole that we are all in the energy sector in Pakistan.
Okay. So Anas, you said you don't have any regulator, so I'll rephrase. Are you satisfied with the role of OGRA in Pakistan?
See, OGRA, I don't, as I said, E&P companies, the regulator actually does not exist in its true sense. The Director General of Petroleum Concessions, Director General of Gas, etc. are kind of the regulators. And obviously we have our own set of documents which govern all those procedures. OGRA primarily is, generally deals with the marketing companies, and obviously some of the ancillary products which we produce. OGRA's role, if I really was to comment on to what OGRA should be doing versus, because I think there should be a clear distinction between a regulator and somebody who actually has to basically monitor that. The policies and the procedures side of OGRA is being strengthened, as I understand. But basically, the monitoring side of OGRA still needs a lot more capacity. The limited capacity which they have, and kind of being optimistic about this, but limited capacity which they have, they try and do whatever they can. And just because I have a direct interaction with those people, not in our line of business, but from a different perspective.
Despite the short time given to us, we have been able to save a little bit time for your comments or questions from the audience. If anybody wants to ask a question, you may raise a hand, and I will ask the organizers to please give them a mic.
Hi, this is Ubaid Khan from EFU General Insurance. And my question is, Pakistan is basically as far as climate change is concerned, so many companies address climate risk in the context of their broader enterprises risk management strategies. The specific types of risk most commonly discussed are those related to direct impacts, such as property damage or increased prices for commodities or insurance. How would you take this as far as the energy sector in Pakistan is concerned? And especially in the transformation of risk as far as the insurance sector in Pakistan is concerned.
Actually, maybe the speaker system, nobody has been able to understand it. Is that correct? No, can you maybe can you come here and ask the question?
I basically want to ask that Pakistan is witnessing an unprecedented transformation risk, driven by pressing concerns related to sustainability, climate change, dynamic operating environments, and complex social challenges. So how can emerging risk and as far as the sustainability of this factor in the energy sector I'm talking about?
I think we are not able to understand what he's saying.
Are you talking about, sorry, we're having a bit of trouble understanding the question, but are you talking about system risks that exist and how we're managing that risk? And I think in there you mentioned environmental risk and other governance issues.
Absolutely.
Correct?
This is the point.
That's a good question. So given that, in particular with renewable energy projects, we ended up in locations where people don't live. So we have to function within an environment which can be challenging. If you look at our wind corridor, you're going from Kharo to Jampir. One site is wet, the other site is very dry and high temperatures. So when we go about doing our system designs and risk analyses, that allows us to design the systems. And in particular, if we're considering the environmental conditions that we're dealing with. Third-party advisors get involved, insurance brokers get involved, environmental stakeholders get involved, technical stakeholders. So when you look at a system that's, for example, Ubaid's projects are located in Jampir, and if you come out to Gharo, yes, it's a 50 megawatt wind project, but the fact is that's a very superficial perspective to take on it because the thinking that goes into the system design drives the reduction of risk in that system. And you're welcome to visit, come out to Zypher and have a discussion, or I'm sure Ubaid would be happy to talk about it, about those decisions in terms of thermal issues, dust issues, technical issues that you go into. I think that should answer it on a higher level basis.
I think we are at the end of the session. Thank you very much for patiently listening to us. Thanks a lot.